Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The reinforced steel of the dormitory door didn't just open. It imploded, the maglocks shrieking in protest before the heavy slab of metal struck the floor with a sound that vibrated in the marrow of Kalen's bones. Kalen ripped the Neuralink visor from his eyes, the neon afterimages of the virtual battlefield fading into the grim, gray reality of his quarters. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs, adrenaline flooding his system not from the game he had been winning, but from the sudden, violent intrusion. He scrambled backward over his unmade bed, reaching for the jagged shard of a circuit board he kept as a makeshift shiv, expecting a sector enforcement raid or a hit squad from the debts he owed back in the Undercity. Instead, standing amidst the haze of settling dust and the harsh strobe of the hallway emergency lights, was the last person Kalen expected to see in the slums of the Scholarship District. It was Lysander Valerius, the Ice Prince of the Academy, the heir to the Valerius Biomed conglomerate. And currently, he looked like he had crawled out of a grave. Lysander's usually pristine silver-white hair was plastered to his forehead by rain and sweat. His tailored uniform, worth more than Kalen's entire life earnings, was torn at the shoulder, stained with mud and something darker, blood. But it was the look in his eyes that froze Kalen in place. The arrogance that usually shielded Lysander like diamond armor was cracked, revealing a raw, terrified desperation. "Lock it," Lysander rasped, his voice trembling. He stumbled forward, clutching his midsection as if holding his insides together. "Kalen, lock the damn door." "The door is on the floor, Lysander." Kalen snapped, sliding off the bed, his confusion warring with a deeply ingrained instinct to help the wounded. He kicked the heavy metal slab back into the frame and jammed a rusted heavy loader bar against it. It wouldn't hold an army, but it would by seconds. He turned back, his chest heaving. What the hell is going on? If the enforcers find a high caste in my room, they aren't enforcers, Lysander hissed, leaning heavily against Kalen's battered desk, knocking over a stack of tech scraps. He was breathing in shallow, ragged gasps. "It's my father's personal guard. The Vipers." Kalen went cold. The Vipers were death squads. They didn't take prisoners, they erased problems. Why is the supreme patriarch of the city trying to kill his own golden boy? Lysander looked up, and for the first time, Kalen saw the shimmer of tears in those violet, genetically engineered eyes. Lysander's hand tightened over his stomach, his knuckles white. "He found out," Lysander whispered, the words barely audible over the thrum of the rain against the window. "The medical scan. It flagged the anomaly this morning." "What anomaly?" Kalen demanded, stepping closer, checking the hallway scanner on his wrist. "Are you sick? Infected?" Lysander let out a broken, hysterical laugh. He glared at Kalen, a flash of his old fire returning. "You really are an idiot, aren't you? A brilliant tactician in the simulation, but blind to the biology of your betters." He took a shuddering breath, his gaze dropping to his abdomen. "I'm not sick, Kalen. I'm carrying." The silence that stretched between them was heavier than the humid air. Kalen stared. He blinked, rewinding the sentence, trying to make the syntax fit the reality he knew. "Carrying," Kalen repeated flatly. "Carrying what? Contraband? Data? A child?" Lysander screamed, the control snapping. "I'm pregnant, you gutter-born fool. And according to the genetic markers, it's yours." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Kalen stared at the flat stomach beneath the ruined uniform, then back at Lysander's pale, furious face. "That." Kalen's voice failed him. He shook his head, a nervous chuckle bubbling up. "That's impossible. Forget the fact that we're both men. I'm a null. I'm zero-grade stock from the Undercity. I don't have the compatibility markers to breed with a high caste. Biology 101 says men can't do that, and even if they could, I certainly couldn't do it to you." 3 months ago, Lysander cut in, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. The masquerade at the solstice. The heat haze in the ventilation system. Everyone was wearing masks. Everyone was out of their minds on the pheromone leak. The memory hit Kalen like a physical blow. The Black Solstice party. He had sneaked in to steal server codes. The ventilation malfunction. The room filling with pink mist. He remembered a mask of black velvet, skin that tasted like winter frost and expensive wine, a desperate, clawing need that transcended logic or caste. He had assumed it was a fever dream, a hallucination induced by the toxins. That was you, Kalen whispered. It was a biological trap, Lysander spat, sliding down the side of the desk to sit on the floor, his energy waning. My biology. The Valerius line was engineered generations ago to be versatile. We are bearers when the lineage requires survival. But it only triggers with a soul match genetic profile. A 1 in a billion compatibility. He looked up at Kalen with sheer loathing mixed with terror. Of all the people in this city, it had to be a null gamer with grease under his fingernails. So your father. My father, Lysander said, his voice breaking, wants a pure blood heir. A mix with a null is an abomination. He sent the Vipers to excise the tumor and sanitize my reputation. Lysander looked at Kalen, his eyes pleading for the first time. He's going to kill it. And then he's going to kill me for letting it happen. The gravity of it settled on Kalen's shoulders. He looked at the trembling aristocrat on his floor, the enemy he had mocked for 3 years, the symbol of everything Kalen hated about the upper city. And then he looked at Lysander's hand, fiercely protecting the life growing inside him. Kalen's expression hardened. The cynicism vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating focus of a man who had survived the Undercity since he was 5. Why come here? Kalen asked, moving to his equipment locker. This is the first place they'll look if they trace your comms. I didn't have a choice, Lysander argued, wincing as a cramp hit him. The dormitory accords. The censors here grant 60 minutes of diplomatic immunity before private military can breach. It was the only place to stop the bleeding before I. He trailed off, looking at the blood on his side. A graze from a laser round. 60 minutes, Kalen muttered. We have 40 left. He pulled out a heavy, canvas duffel bag. He didn't pack clothes. He packed EMP grenades, a portable railgun he had built from stolen scrap, and a medkit that was illegal in 3 sectors. What are you doing? Lysander asked, watching Kalen load a clip with terrifying efficiency. You said it's mine, Kalen said, not looking up. In the Undercity, we don't have much. But we keep what's ours. He walked over to Lysander, kneeling before him. Up close, the contrast was stark. Kalen's scarred, tan skin against Lysander's porcelain perfection. Kalen reached out, hesitating, before placing a rough hand over Lysander's on his stomach. Lysander flinched, but didn't pull away. A strange, electric current seemed to arc between them at the touch, the resonance of the bond Lysander had spoken of. You can't fight them, Lysander whispered, fear making him small. They are Vipers. And I'm the guy who's been ranking number 1 in the war simulations for 3 years using a laggy connection and a broken controller, Kalen said, his eyes dark and dangerous. They're used to fighting soldiers who follow rules. They've never fought a rat who has nothing to lose. He stood up and offered a hand. Can you run? I think so. Good. Because we aren't hiding. We're hunting a way out. The escape was a nightmare of neon and rain. They moved through the service tunnels of the dormitory complex, the narrow corridors illuminated only by the flickering red of emergency lights. Kalen took point, moving with a silent, predatory grace that Lysander had never noticed in the brightly lit classrooms. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Lysander struggled to keep up, the pain in his side a constant, throbbing fire. But Kalen was always there. Every time Lysander stumbled, a strong arm was there to catch him, hauling him forward, not with the rough impatience Lysander expected, but with a firm, grounding solidity. Wait, Kalen signaled, pressing Lysander against the damp concrete wall. Ahead, at the junction of the tunnel, 2 figures in sleek, black combat armor stood scanning the area with thermal optics. Vipers. They cut off the service exit, Kalen whispered. Smart. We're trapped, Lysander breathed, panic rising in his throat. Kalen, leave me. If you surrender, they might just wipe your memory. If you fight. Shut up, Kalen said, but there was no heat in it. He was scanning the ceiling. Do you trust me? No, Lysander answered honestly. I hate you. You're loud, you're messy, and you smell like cheap oil. Kalen smirked, a sharp, feral expression in the dark. Good. Hold on to that hate. It'll keep you awake. Kalen reached into his bag and pulled out a small, spherical device. These tunnels run under the main power grid for the distraction district. If I blow the junction, the magnetic dampeners fail. And gravity gets really subjective for about 30 seconds. Before Lysander could protest, Kalen tossed the sphere. It rolled silently toward the Vipers. Asterisk 3, 2, 1. Asterisk a deafening thrum echoed through the tunnel, deeper than sound. A pulse of blue light exploded outward. Instantly, the world unmoored. The water on the floor floated up in globules. The Vipers yelled as they lifted off the ground, flailing without traction. Move! Kalen roared, grabbing Lysander's hand. They didn't run, they bounded. Kalen kicked off the wall, pulling Lysander through the floating debris. It was disorienting, sickening, and exhilarating. They flew past the flailing assassins, Kalen firing a precise electrical bolt from his makeshift pistol into the Vipers' armor suits as they passed, locking their joints and leaving them frozen in midair. They crashed through the exit hatch just as gravity slammed back into existence. They hit the wet asphalt of the back alley hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Lysander cried out, curling around his stomach. "I've got you." Kalen was there instantly, pulling him up. "We're out. The safe zone is 3 blocks down. The dead sector." "The dead sector?" Lysander gasped, limping heavily. "That's a quarantine zone. It's toxic." "Not for me," Kalen said. "And not for the baby, if it really has my DNA. We have resistance. It's the only place the Vipers won't follow without heavy hazmat gear. It buys us time." The rain turned acidic as they crossed the boundary into the older, ruined part of the city. The towering skyscrapers of the elite district faded into the skeletal remains of the old world. They found shelter in the basement of a collapsed library. It was dry, dusty, and smelled of old paper. Kalen secured the heavy iron door and engaged a jamming signal he had set up years ago for his illicit gaming servers. Finally safe, the adrenaline crashed. Lysander slid down the wall, his face gray. He was shivering violently. "Here," Kalen said, his voice softer now. He draped a thermal blanket from his bag over Lysander's shoulders. He knelt and began to strip the armor from Lysander's wound. "It's shallow, cauterized by the laser. But you're going into shock." "It's the hormones," Lysander muttered, his teeth chattering. "My body is rewriting itself to support the life. It drains everything." Kalen worked in silence, cleaning the wound and applying a nanite patch. His hands, usually so rough, were incredibly gentle. "Why?" Lysander asked softly, watching Kalen's face in the dim light of a glow stick. "You could have sold me out. My father would have paid millions." Kalen paused. He sat back on his heels, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked at Lysander, really looked at him. The mask of the arrogant prince was gone. All that was left was a frightened young man carrying a burden he hadn't asked for. "I grew up without parents," Kalen said quietly. "In the Undercity, life is cheap. People sell their kids for credits. I swore if I ever had a family, no one would touch them. No one." He reached out, his hand hovering over Lysander's stomach again. "Can I?" Lysander hesitated, then nodded slowly. Kalen placed his palm flat against the warmth of Lysander's abdomen. There was no movement yet, it was too early, but the connection was instantaneous. A pulse, faint but undeniable, echoed against his palm, a resonance of his own heartbeat. "It's real," Kalen whispered, softening his sharp features. "Men really can do this. Only with their soulmate," Lysander corrected, his voice barely a whisper. The realization hung between them. Enemies. Rivals. Soulmates. Kalen looked up, his eyes locking with Lysander's violet gaze. "Then I guess we're stuck with each other, princess." Lysander let out a weak huff of laughter, leaning his head back against the wall. "Don't call me princess. I'm still your superior." "Not down here. You're not?" Kalen said, moving to sit next to him, pressing their shoulders together for warmth. "Down here, you're just the guy carrying my kid. And I'm the guy who's going to burn your father's empire to the ground if he tries to take you." Lysander looked at the profile of the man next to him. The dirt, the scars, the stubborn set of his jaw. He realized, with a jolt of terror and wonder, that he felt safer in this ruin with a null than he had ever felt in his father's palace. "Kalen." "Yeah. If we survive this. You have to teach me how to play that game." Kalen smirked, closing his eyes. Deal. But first, you sleep. I'll take the first watch. Outside, the acid rain hissed against the concrete, and the drones of the Sterling Syndicate began to sweep the city grid. But in the dark of the basement, amidst the ruins of the old world, a new alliance was forged, not of politics, but of blood and bone. And that is how the Viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Kalen step up to protect what's his, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who tried to kill you to protect a pure bloodline? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,